following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hi, this is Ken Gidge, and this is The Art of Politics. Of course, it's the only show on the air that has a Democrat, Democrats are good, of course, and a Republican, and well, anyway, my partner, how are you? Bill
Ken,
O'Brien?
It's great to be here again with you.
We have a guest.
We do. We have my seatmate up at the house.
Okay, explain what a seatmate is.
Okay, so we are all assigned seats by the speaker, and Representative or Speaker Norelli this term assigned Republicans and Democrats randomly. I think it's a great thing to have done.
In fact, you wanted to do this last time.
I had proposed it to her, and it's somewhat unfamiliar, and the response I received back from her is, no, please don't do this, and we want to, as a smaller minority, we want to be together. And so I understood that, and we did it, and she approached it differently, and I'm glad she did. I think it worked out well. I think it is working out very well.
Mary is your seatmate.
And more importantly, I wouldn't have had a chance to meet Mary and talk with her, once a week if we're in session. So, Representative Nelson, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Representative O'Brien, and perhaps I would be comfortable if you called me Mary, if that's not too informal for you in your audience.
No, let's do that. Let's absolutely do that, because otherwise it'd be a little bit artificial.
Sure.
Because as we talk throughout the day when we're in session, it is Bill and Mary.
That's correct.
And then we talk about him, and
yes, we do.
don't. I won't talk about how we refer to him, because it'd be embarrassing to you, Kenny. You don't know, do you?
Oh well, you're getting braver as time goes on, Mr. Former Speaker. But as time goes on, I'll get a little bit better. One question I want to ask Mary. I did a lot of radio. You've been on my radio show before, I believe. Like yes. WSMN?
Yes, I was on the radio.
Yeah.
I think I was there before you, though.
No, you did radio, but you were on my show.
Yes, I was, Ken. Whenever you ask, whenever you call, I run.
And you didn't have to. All I do is...
No, I was on it, actually. Any time that I have an opportunity to speak to the people in Nashua and let them know that I'm here, working for them as hard as I can, doing the best I can, it's always wonderful. And this is one of the only ways I'm able to communicate with the public. So I thank you, and obviously I always like to thank the public before I begin in the constituents in the city of Nashua. So thank you.
One of the things that I've found out is you're well-known, well-respected in Nashua, and have provided great public service over the years. But we have viewers in Derry, and Londonderry, Amherst, Claremont,
oh yes,
and some other towns and cities.
Amherst.
And so what would be great is if you give us a little bit of what your background has been in public service, how you became involved, why you became involved. It would be really interesting, I think, for folks.
Well, thank you, Bill and Ken. It's always a wonderful thing to be able to sit here and talk about yourself with a question that's so leading as that. So let me say that again. Let me say thank you again. I actually I taught school. I taught the blind students, people who are blind, and lived at Perkins School for the Blind for 10 years. So I like to always give them credit for what they taught me. And I believe as a result of teaching and working with people who had difficulty seeing or were totally blind, it really made me verbalize everything and to talk more, because I know this will come as a shock, but I can be relatively shy, and of course I've outgrown some of it. But anyway, I just wanted to say the genesis of some of this.
I'd like the camera to know that I'm smiling. She's shy. Excuse me.
No, I think I was here in Nashua when I came in. They were making some changes in the state with programs for people who are blind. I went to the library to listen. I saw that a lot of people, and I heard that people didn't really understand. So that was probably the first step that I made into it. And then I served on boards of directors, Needs Incorporated, for example, the Girls Club, et cetera, in the city. And then one day I met Governor Gallen I was the chair of the board of the Needs Incorporated, and Governor Gallen happened to be our guest for the 10th anniversary. And he just looked and said, "Why aren't you in politics?" And the truth of the matter is, very truly, I never thought of it before, nor did I think of myself as a politician. I still don't, but I understand I'm in the field, and that's the label you get. So anyway, from there, I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I ended up taking a look at it. My husband and I went up to Concord on some other business, and I took a look at the chamber, and I had a lot of encouragement from people, and that's how I really got involved. And I ran as a state representative from Ward 8 in Nashua.
And what years?
That was 1983.
83. How
So
long were you there?
I was there until 86 when I went into the Senate.
Okay, so then you ran for the Senate.
I did. But I was very fortunate because I chaired the Nashua delegation, and I think it's important to say that back in the old days, so to speak, there were 15 Democrats and 14 Republicans representing the city of Nashua. And I had the honor of chairing them. And I worked with, Lord of mercy on her soul, Audrey Carragher, Betty Tamposi, John Stabile was in the Senate, Rick Boyer was the senator at the time. And because our common goal was the people of the city of Nashua, we really worked together. Ed Keefe, who was the former superintendent of schools, so we really worked together for Nashua. So of course there's some partisan issues from time to time, but if you focus on the best you're trying to do for your town or your city or the constituents, it really made it easy to work back then.
How long were you a senator?
I was a senator for 3 terms.
3 terms?
Yeah, I can. And
After
I was, yes, Rick Boyer chose not to run again. A lot of people suggested I run. I said, no, you know the usual. Then you have to raise money. That's always awkward. And as the mother's milk of politics, it wasn't my favorite job. But I fortunately, back then, in 1985, I started running for it to be elected in 86. I ran against a fantastic candidate who was a Republican, Pat Janelle Donovan. She was a terrific candidate, an excellent speaker. I had a lot of respect for her. I fortunately was able to win that race and go up to Concord, and that's how that happened. Did I go off the track?
And so what did you sponsor during the first few years when you were there as a representative and as a senator? What were your issues, I guess, more generically?
What I did was I went door to door because I had done door to door work before with pudding, so I got to meet a lot of people and do pudding. So I learned how to talk to people and really to listen to them and to hear what it is that they were saying. And I listened to their interest back then, quote unquote. The big issues were, of course, the same thing. No sales tax, no income tax. Education was a big thing. I was involved with Mothers Against Drunken Driving. So Pat Lyons at the time and I and Rick Newman brought in the first piece of legislation for victims' rights. So it was alcohol, drunken driving, and those kinds of issues were important back then. But I didn't rush in to sponsor all kinds of legislation. I saw part of my job as being available to the constituents. And I see us, and I see the Congress and the United States Senate, if you will, as an underutilized resource for people, because we are there, in essence, to do their bidding, if you will, with this big bureaucracy called government with many agencies. Right. So I think I did a lot of constituent service, right, which I very much enjoyed, helping people. And, you know, they had trouble with everything, their Social Security, whatnot. It was a little different in the Senate.
And so after your tenure in the Senate, did you take off until you recently rejoined us, or was there a time, did you come back and forth, going
No.
and back? And
It sounds like the life of Mary Nelson.
Well,
as well it should be.
No, not
We
really.
don't want it to be the life of King Gidge.
yeah,
right?
well, we'll take care of that.
Well,
We're gonna, as I said to Mary, we will find out what Mary's up to, and then we'll attack him.
I would like to say this about the Senate, because I know that because you are there in the present day and I was in the past, and I served for 10 years. And after 10 years, I said to myself, 10 years is enough, because what happens is, I feel that people begin to think they own it. They don't mean to be negative. They want to do the best they can. But after 10 years, I think it's good to get some new blood, even 5 or 10 or 15. I'm not suggesting 10 is the limit. So for me personally, I jumped out. But I wanted to say this. I wanted to digress just a little bit to say this. When I was there, I was in the minority, always in the minority, where the Republicans who were in control and the Democrats were in the, obviously.
87 years, I believe, that they were in control.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but what I discovered then in the Senate, and I chaired the capital budget in a Republican-controlled Senate, and I was the vice chair of insurance in a Republican-controlled Senate. It is unusual, but I'll tell you, Bill Bartlett and Eddie DuPont were there. He was the president of the Senate. And back then, that would be back in the 80s, people really looked at skills that you might possess or your ability to get things done. And it wasn't as partisan, in my opinion.
And so that actually kind of leads into a question I had. And I was going to say, you know, I think I hear from you that it wasn't as partisan then as it is now, and you did say that. And I'm wondering if you think, as I do, that one of the reasons, there's many reasons, but an important reason in New Hampshire is that there was less likelihood of a change of party or majority party in either the Senate or the House, so it just became less important. It was more, what does Mary know, can Mary do, rather than is Mary a member of the Democratic Party or a member of the Republican Party. Now that there's more likelihood that we can go back and forth, that's when sort of the partisan antennas come out.
Well,
or am I just wrong on that?
Well, I wouldn't say you're wrong. I think that's your opinion, and of course you're entitled to it. What I would suggest to you is this. Make no mistake about it, that when one runs for office, one is clearly a partisan. One is in most cases, not in all cases, one is supporting the person in their party to run for office and be elected.
You have to.
Yeah, that's the name of the game.
At least the beginning
That's
to
right.
set up.
That's the way it is. But I think the difference then, we had partisan issues, but we broke bread. We talked, and when you came together for the good of the people, you didn't bother who was what party. You really didn't focus on it. I mean, this is my humble opinion. You just did the job. You got it done. Now, obviously, taxes or something like that came up abortion or something might have been more contentious in terms of partisan, but no. And let me say something else. You may regret having me here because I can talk without breathing, as you say, and look in 10 different directions at the same time. What I think is that after carrying on here, I've kind of lost what I was saying in this.
Well, one of the concerns I have is where's this come from? You know, if it's not that the people haven't changed or our genes haven't changed, but clearly a rhetoric is sharper. People tend to define themselves more based on partisan affiliations, or at least that's my perception. And I really am curious, without trying to drive a conclusion,
No, you drive it with
where it comes from.
Do you mean
let me
partisan?
Yeah.
Partisan issues?
Yeah.
Well, let me just, as you've asked the question, you were the Speaker of the House. Do you consider yourself as a bipartisan individual then?
Do I consider myself a bipartisan?
At that
I'm not
particular,
schizophrenic.
were you the Speaker? Oh, yes, you are occasionally. When you were the Speaker of the House, did you feel that you were a bipartisan individual?
I certainly.
What do you think people thought about you?
Certainly, the administration of the House should have been nonpartisan, and I attempted for it to be nonpartisan. By administration, you would look at such things as who gets assigned trips, and are we assured? Are we trying to make sure that everybody has the same right to state house resources and so forth? Certainly. On the other hand, as I think Mary was saying, I was elected as a Republican, and the commitment I made to those who gave me in my district the most votes was that I would pursue an agenda that was in conformity to what I understand to be the Republican perspective.
But what do you think people thought about you? Do you think people believe that you were a partisan?
First of all, they thought about me based. They thought about me what the rhetoric at times would dictate that they think about me. For example, if the Democratic Party leadership was saying, we want you to think of this person as being a bully, I'm sure many people thought about me as being a bully. On the other hand, if some of my supporters thought about me as being strong and ignoring false criticism, and therefore a leader of some character, some did. So it really depended on what your perspective was and who you're listening to.
Why did you get back into the? Why did you come back?
Well, I
mean, you've been away a long time, and now
Right.
you're coming back as a representative. And it's interesting. I was just going to say a simple representative compared to a senator, and we both know senators really work hard, and we do too in the House. But I mean,
they're different.
Why did you come back?
I've asked myself that on several occasions. I guess I've always been, as you know, I've spent a lot of time in service, in public service, and working in the city of Nashua, et cetera.
Yes.
So I think it was a natural. I was not particularly enthralled with what was happening up there, and to be very frank, I really was terribly offended by this one particular incident. I mean, there were probably many I could say, and that was the incident where the representative used his office, in my opinion, to attack the bishop. at a meeting that was clear,
Ooh.
at a meeting the bishop was at, clearly not to discuss religion or anything else. And he referred to him in those awful terms. And as you don't maybe not remember, but I was very upset, and I called you, I called the representative, I called Barry, and I called my other representative in Ward 8, Pete Silva. I was disappointed in the reaction.
Was this the Facebook posting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought one does not, in my humble opinion, again I use that word because one does not, I was not familiar with this type of nonsense. When I was there, we all sat together. John Tucker was a fine man. Harold Burns, who just passed away. These were real people who were clearly Republicans, but they were respectful of one another, whether you agreed with them or not. And you were agreeable without being disagreeable. You didn't attack people. So anyway, I think I was motivated to some extent. What was going on in the Congress seemed to me a little crazy. So I just thought, having a bit of an ego, obviously, I guess I said,
Let me ask about that conversation, because I was speaker then and received many calls.
I was one
from
of them.
people. And I don't recall yours, and I apologize for doing that.
Well, no,
How did that, I say...
Maybe it's lucky where I sit beside you.
No, that's fine. What was the conversation? Could you recount the conversation?
Sure. I told you how that you brought shame. You brought shame on the people of the state of New Hampshire.
Why did you say that? Why did you say I did that?
No, I didn't say you did it. I said this gentleman brought shame on the people of the state of New Hampshire.
What was my response to that?
You said nothing. So I said to you, you said absolutely nothing on the telephone. So I said to you, oh, sure. Of course you're not going to say anything. You're a lawyer. Why would you say anything? That's what I said to you.
What did I say then?
You said nothing. You said nothing. No, you said nothing.
You just hung up, and I said hello.
I said goodbye.
And you hung up?
And I hung up. I wasn't rude. I didn't just slam the phone down.
No, I can't see you. But let me just.
Anyway, that's what's
let me
my
just.
story.
This is a great opportunity for me to argue with this gentleman sitting beside me. But
look, let's set the context here. I went without telling anyone to the bishop and apologized.
Yes, you told me that.
For my colleague. And I can say that now because he's moved along now.
But what was wrong with saying it publicly? What was the problem?
I did say it publicly, but I also went to him privately and said, that is not the sentiment.
I know, but it was offensive to me that none of the representatives who represented me, even though on the telephone they agreed it was bad, they didn't like it. No one stood up. Not one person stood up. Now, maybe you hated the guy. Maybe what the guy did wasn't what you thought he should have done. And I don't mean the guy in any disrespectful tone. But the fact that no one had the intestinal fortitude in that legislative branch to stand up and say publicly,
and
this guy's out of line and he shouldn't have said it.
Well, I think if you look at what we said at the time, Mary, and what we said is, he should have never expressed himself that way.
And you said.
You
said, if I said it, I agree, but if I said it, I would have used more graceful terms. Something like that.
No, I said if I agreed with it, I would have said it in a more graceful way.
Right.
And it's fine to say that within the church, if you're concerned about that as an issue, and the representative said it was a young man and a devout Catholic, and was truly offended by the burden that comes with the allegations, and in some case the reality of abuse of children.
Of course.
And as a young person might, even though he had a position of leadership, he used terminology that was bad.
Well, I'm only saying this because I was asked why I got involved, and what propelled me a little bit, and that was one of the issues.
Let me finish what I was going to say.
Oh, sure.
I definitely want to, here's a great time for me to, in a sense, attack this gentleman, because this is what we do on this show. I mean, but having said, I'm not done. Having said that, I can tell you right now that I know he was upset about this. You follow? This was not something he would have ever said.
I'm sure.
Let me ask you, did you ever say anything to the representative who said that?
Of course, we were all very disappointed in him. We were all very disappointed.
Yeah. Okay.
We all expressed our disappointment in him, and part of it was a political reaction. Stay off Facebook. What the heck? Don't you understand?
Yep.
We tend to deal with these new social media communication devices in ways that are very dangerous for a lot of us. We tend to think that you can make flippant. I call it this, and I hope you understand what I'm saying. Cocktail party type of comments that are witty and all. We think, and if they're said in a cocktail party, We may go home and feel ashamed for ourselves for having said that about a bishop, but they go away. But on Facebook, they don't go away.
They don't ever
They
go
stay
away.
there. In
No.
email, they don't go away, and it becomes an official, position. And I think that's what happened to a young person who was majority leader, and probably to this day still remains deeply embarrassed, as he should, by those remarks, and deeply regretful of those remarks.
And I
And
didn't have
but
a-
understand, as we're saying this, we're saying, as we react to it, we're reacting to it in an environment where he's being viciously attacked. And so,
Who
the Representative Betancourt, the one who said it,
was viciously attacked?
sure, absolutely.
Well, do you think he should have, to a degree, for what he did?
He certainly, in this environment, earned it.
okay.
And so you have to understand that as you don't want to pile it on. You want to go to the person who is the subject of it and say, I, the leader of this House,
Yeah.
apologize to you. And you certainly want to go to the public and say, that's not a way to express yourself.
Yeah, that's not the only thing I would become charged over.
Right.
I just used that as an
No,
example.
but
Your
it-
hair, and I mean, there were other issues, and and the other part for me was no one was paying any, now these are my opinions, I want to say it again, no one was paying that much attention to Nashua. I thought the rail,
boy,
all
did
of
I
the
agree with that.
all the issues that we had going on
Wow.
down here, no one was paying attention. We're the second largest city in the state. We're the gate city. We bring more money
Absolutely.
into this state via this channel than than any of the other towns. That doesn't mean I don't support what goes on in the North Country and want them to to thrive, because if they thrive, we thrive. So I just thought, what's going on up there? Who is paying attention to Nashua? I mean, who up in the state?
But you must remember here in Nashua, you're right. You must remember the only Democrats here in Nashua was only like 4 of us, 5 of us, compared to 20 plus Republicans.
What's the delegation now? It's 26, I think?
It's 20,
26,
yeah. And
No, I think
the
27.
rail, I think, probably got everyone mostly. We're just nuts over that. But we couldn't do anything.
I don't think it's a matter of we were 6 Democrats and they were 25 Republicans. The fact of the matter is, no matter what that's the point I'm trying to make. We took this oath to represent
Yeah,
the people
yeah.
of the state, to uphold the Constitution, and then keep our eye on what was going on. And it seemed to me that people were marching lockstep with the leadership, and they weren't paying, maybe they were working hard, but it wasn't coming across to me when I was watching what was happening up there.
You know, I've said many times, even on the show, that somewhere along the line, people forgot where they were from.
I think so.
And last campaign, this was sort of like, well, I remember where I'm from. Some of these people did go up there and did some good things,
Sure.
Republicans, but they forgot where they were from.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, I mean, we talk about the art of politics, and one of the always unresolved questions, but always present question, is as a representative, do you go up there to vote the
Right.
sentiment of your district or to vote your good common sense?
Yeah, I know that's always a question
And-
people want to ask. Are you voting your conscience? Are you voting your conscience? Are you voting your constituencies? Are you voting your party?
Right.
Well, in my particular case, I would like to think I vote my conscience, and I think everybody who knows me knows I'm going to tell them exactly what I think, and if it means you can't vote for me, that's okay. I respect that. And then I'm going to, I try to keep my eye on the constituency, and in a lot of cases, I agree with most of them in most of the issues. Not all of them, but most of them, if I don't, I try to figure out, I try to understand and make sure that they get to the people who are going to help them.
Right. And it's a difficult thing to do. And none of us, I think, even internally as representatives, quite have found the final answer there. And if we think we do, then we come across an issue that says, geez, I'm really at variance with my district on this. What do I do?
Well, let me say this. Well, let me just suggest this to you. There are certain issues that really are not going to require you to go deep within your soul, if you will, and talk of your conscience or however you're going to vote. If you're dealing with the capital budget, if you're dealing with roads and highways, and you're dealing with trains and buses and transportation, et cetera, issues, then it's a lot easier because you're just dealing in dollars and cents and more importantly, the safety of the people of the state of New Hampshire. So you're looking at it, it's pretty concrete to me. So I don't see people equivocating as much, because they can say, for example, on the bill for the gas tax, they can say they don't like taxes, they don't want to do this, and there's no question about it. And they're going to have half the people in the district support it and the other half don't. But when you get into the other area, sometimes with education, even though people want to say it's the children are a most important part of our society and we want to make them grow, it becomes a little more difficult for people. So I'm thinking the more we come away from a concrete, becomes a little more abstract for people. I think it gets a little more challenging for them. I don't know, Ken, what you and Bill think.
No,
but
I hear you on that.
Yeah, it's you're getting to some points that I think the listeners, the people who watch the show and who are interested in politics, you bring up some good points. The fact is that it's very difficult, and I always said, look, this is where I'm from, Nashua. I mean, I'll never forget that. But occasionally a few things come up, and it's not going to help the city, but it's going to help the state as a whole. And as you said, it may help the North Country more than it helps Nashua. But having said that, if the North Country thrives, we thrive, if the whole state thrives.
yeah.
So it's interesting. Politics.
You know, I started a law firm when I was in Boston with, at the time, 3 other young fellows. And one of them was in the state legislature there when we started it. And eventually he became Speaker of the House. So even though I wasn't involved in politics down there much at all, I would come across his colleagues, as, who were state representatives, and I'd go to functions and see them, and got to know their personalities somewhat, and enough so that I can contrast them with what I see in New Hampshire. And we have something fairly wonderful here. We don't have state representatives who are here as a career move. We get paid $100 a year. And we chuckle about it. We often do, because, we kind of amongst ourselves, to reveal a well-known secret, we say, well, are we crazy enough to do this,
Mm-hmm.
But what the state gets is principled representation, as opposed to what I saw in Massachusetts, which is too many representatives were there, because that's the best job they're ever going to get. And the reason I bring this up, it kind of relates to the question that I was asking you, because in Massachusetts, I would see the representatives reach decisions, and they would often be based upon what preserves me in this job, and so it would be constantly with a wet finger to the wind, which way am I going to go on it? And up here in New Hampshire, I've seen much more of a willingness to do kind of what I think you would do and I would do and Ken would do, which is to say, I might disagree with the sentiment at the present in my district. I have an obligation, though, to do what I think is right and then explain it. And then, if my explanation is either incorrect or not persuasive, I lose my job. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Well, I think Massachusetts, for the benefit, and the public may already be aware of this, is that we have no staff. Well, that's not entirely true. We do have a pool, a secretarial pool of 2 or 3 women that will help us out. We have a seat, and in front of us is a pocket into which we put all our material, and that would be our desk. In Massachusetts, they have 2 and 3 and 4 people who are their staff who are paid, and they become more and more removed from their constituency.
Yes.
So you're not going to say to me, Mary, you'll be talking to my assistant, Bill, and Ken. Now, if you're lucky to get by Ken, Bill's got a better job, so you might have better luck. You might meet me at a fundraiser. So I think I'm really insulated. I'm protected.
Yes.
You're going to get angry at Ken, or maybe you. So I think that contributes to what you're saying. Right. But I would disagree with you gently, for the television's sake, and that is, I think there are people in New Hampshire who do run for this, either for a career, not for a career in terms of money, but they do run and they do put their finger to the wind, and it is important to them. I'm not saying it goes across the board, but as you said earlier, we're all humans, we're all part of this race. There are people who are similar to that.
It's funny you should mention that, because
well, you brought it up.
This is a Thursday, and so we had a session day yesterday,
yeah.
Wednesday, and one of the thoughts that kept on running through my head yesterday was how inactive some people are who you would expect to be active on the House floor, people who are put in positions of leadership.
Good point.
And so forth.
Good point.
And I was sitting there, asking myself, why are they here? You left after 10 years. I'm going to either move up or out after this term, and I think that's appropriate.
What do you mean by up?
Well, I'm
Do you
considering.
mean a different path as opposed to
No,
up?
no, I'm considering running for Congress, so it's sort of move into a different position.
I didn't want
Or,
to suggest that we were down and you were going up.
no, well,
Okay, Bill, sorry, that was a feeble attempt at humor.
yeah, no. And given the way I'm being whipsawed here, probably it's not up. No, but the point I was making is to
Yeah.
agree with you and to then to sort of sit back saying I'm genuinely confused as to why people would dedicate so much of their life
Yeah.
to this without having a purpose for being there, or seemingly a purpose for being there other than you get a plate on the car and you get to call yourself
Yeah.
representative. I mean,
People swear
You
it.
brought up a good point, and this was driving me crazy last year, and I've this not necessarily last year, but more this year, and that is the same people in the Democratic Party last year. The same 5 or 6 people did everything, and a lot of people didn't do anything. And the fact is that when one tried to get in there, it was closed off. So I was upset at the Democrats last year.
I have to tell you, and maybe you could address this and tell me whether I'm just wrong and
Maybe you
coming off
can.
what you said, or maybe you answer the reason why I might be right. When we look across the figurative aisle at the Democrats, one of the things that we look at as Republicans and see is a lack of participation by the rank and file in the Democrats.
Give me an example.
Well, yesterday, for example, you saw a bunch of first-term backbenchers from the Republican get up. They prepared speeches. They came forward. They tried to be persuasive. They cared about particular bills. There was no one there, for better or worse, to say, don't get up. As a matter of fact, there were people there saying, here, if you're going to speak on this, here's some pointers, and here's how you organize the debate. And it's true, at least it seems to us, that when we look at the Democrat legislative party, we don't see that same depth of participation. We don't see first-term members getting up to the same degree, and I'm wondering, or even first-term members leading a debate.
Well, I would say, shall I jump in, Ken?
Absolutely.
I might be wrong, but that's an impression.
No, I don't.
I think
That's
you
just-
are to a little.
Yeah,
but,
or it's just an observation that you're making based from the seat in which you sit and have sat.
Right.
I think really what we want to make sure people know is that we are a committee of 400, and as we know, the masses are usually controlled by a few. But we also have a system that's made up of committees, of standing committees. We have an education committee, we have a commerce committee that deals with banking, et cetera. We have a transportation and capital budget. So and it's roughly 20, 23, 24 people. So I think there are a lot of people who are very, very engaged in the legislation, because when a bill comes in, they have to study the bill, bring in the experts, bring in those who are pro and who are con. So I think they've done a tremendous amount of work before they hit the floor. And there are many people who don't particularly care to hear the sound of their own voice or don't feel it necessary to go up. They're happy to have expressed themselves and they're on the record as having voted. So I wouldn't say that they're not participating and that they're not active. They just may not feel a need to jump up and run down, but clearly they're participating.
And I can
think
look,
you're saying something
I can
different.
No, I can look at it also the other way. We had some important bills come up. One was I'm against bars being open until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I really spoke in committee. I'm in Commerce.
Sure.
And then Consumer Affairs also is in Commerce. And I thought of all the people who should get up and talk about it are people, I owned a large nightclub here in the city of Nashua at one time, who should get up and talk about that is not somebody who had never done it before, because I thought this was an important issue. First speech, she called me and she said, can you help me out? Which I did as much as I could. But I went to the vice chair and I said, it's okay to put this person up there. I think everybody has got to get out there. But here's an important issue. Now, having said that, I also can look at it the way you see it, that not enough people are out there. On the other hand, I also can say there are too many Republicans up there. You guys ought to sit down a little bit more. There's too many.
But really? I don't think there's too many. I think it's a time for them to develop leadership, and I think they care about these issues. They really do. There just seems to be more of a willingness. When I was there the first term, I was on election law. Mike Wally, who had been...
sure, a lot of mercy on his soul.
Yeah, was the...
He was in there when I was there.
Yeah, fine man, really was chairman of election law. I went to him and said what was very important to me were these ethics bills. It was after the Benson administration, there'd been a lot of charges about conflict of interest, and so there were a number of bills that came, 5 bills were filed, that had to do with executive branch ethics issues. And I told him, I'm fairly interested in this. I'd like to be able to contribute. And he gave that to me. And so he allowed me to chair the retained bills committee. He allowed me to work with Secretary of State and write the consolidated bill. He allowed me to participate with him in meetings with the governor.
But a lot of people don't like you get up and ask those things.
Yeah.
You know, let's face it, you're a different quality.
Pretty assertive, wants to get involved.
Well,
could be,
educated,
but
a lawyer.
But there was a real willingness.
Yeah.
And Doug Scammon was the Republican speaker
Yeah.
then. And, you know, within 2 months of my being there, he appointed me as a caucus whip, one of the deputy caucus whips. There was a real willingness to say, okay, you want to be involved, freshman member, or you want to be involved, we'll allow you to be involved. And maybe it's just a perception. I mean, it always looks a little bit more opaque when you're looking at the other side. I don't see that same willingness to say, you want to know what, I mean, I talked to some freshman members of the Democrat caucus, and just like the Republican members, there's some real talent there. There's people that bring sterling backgrounds, and you'd assume you'd grab that person.
Yeah, but you see, you are an assertive person. I am in commerce, and there are some very brilliant people, and I can tell you about one because we'll talk about the bill that I sponsored that made history yesterday to a degree, all right? But there's not too many people who are that assertive, brilliant people who don't say anything, who don't walk up and say that. Let's face it, if I was a committee chair or I had something to do with politics and a person of your quality said, look, I want to do stuff, I say, as much as you want.
Well,
you know?
maybe, but I don't think it was just unique to me. But maybe, you know, we all tend to take our own experience and then say that's life in general. Which
I think it's the same, but I think if from where I sit, right beside you, I do see a lot of people speaking at the well, but I see a lot of the same Republicans speaking at the well. I mean, I think people, it's been my perception and experience, and what people have shared with me, is that it can be a little intimidating to stand up in front of 400 people. Understand that one of the most scary things in life is what? Right up there with buying a house is and death is speaking before the public.
Yeah, public, right.
So let's be clear that you're saying to a brand new person who's got to learn the job, who's never had experience, etc., even though they're brilliant and knowledgeable, stand up there in front of 400 people when we observe other people standing up and walking out, talking when they're speaking. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, which I can understand that they're reticent to do it. So I'm not sure that the Republicans have the corner of the market on the ones that want to get up there. I just think that it depends. You have some, Richard Meany, for example, who's a state representative, a Republican from Goffstown, sits in front of me. Now, he's very poised. He's a former military. He enjoys it, and he's very well spoken, and he likes to get up and speak, and he likes to converse, it seems to me. Same with Al Baltazaro, who's another Republican who's very passionate about the military. But on the other hand, we have some Democrats some young Democrats who like to get up. Rennie Cushing from the Seacoast. We have Marjorie Smith. You know, we have that Pam Brown from Nashua.
Marjorie Smith
has been there a long time.
Well, I'm just throwing her name out. And Pam Brown, who's...
I'd like to throw her out, but you can throw her name out.
Well, Pam Brown is there. I mean, we have some wonderful Nashua people who have been up there too. So I don't think anybody has
it's interesting you would say that, because last year I was sitting, you know, you're sort of looking at it at the opposite, because now we're the majority. But last year I said the very same thing you said. It's the same Democrats who are up there all the time. And that was my big complaint. Will you put someone else new up there?
Well, I'm not complaining, because anybody can speak at the well if you choose to. You just go to the Speaker of the House and you say, I want to speak about it. Dan Hansberry from Nashua just spoke, And it took on the whole committee and the whole Senate and the whole everybody, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, because he felt strongly about an issue. And the vote was something like 300 and something to 54.
Let me ask you, I mean, obviously I don't want you to reveal caucus confidences or
I'll
anything.
reveal anything you want for the public.
But
Long as it's not confidential.
But what is the reaction to that within the caucus? A freshman member getting up and opposing
Nothing.
a committee report?
Nothing. And not only that, in the caucus, he gets up and tells the caucus, I disagree with this bill. I voted against it. He and I were the only two on the committee who voted against it.
Great.
And I will work hard to, that strong arming behind, and Ken can address it. I've not seen it. Whether because they don't want to bother me, I don't know.
I have been.
Okay.
Yes,
I have not.
I have, but not, when you go to, we've shown some material where there's been, people wrote on the caucus about some of the things that you had done. I mean, we went over this, okay?
Yeah.
But I have gone into my own caucus, and have the person speaking, and I've raised my hand 5 times, they wouldn't listen to me. They wouldn't take my hand, simply because they knew what I was going to say. I disagreed. Now, it may be a little bit better because you haven't seen me at any caucus meetings. I will not go.
Yeah.
Only because of that very reason. So and I'm a good Democrat, to be honest with you. So I guess what's the interesting thing, that I never thought the conversation would go this way, is that we're sort of all complaining about something politically, and it's also something regarding our own parties. It's not just Republicans or Democrats, it's both. It's fascinating. I never thought the conversation would go this way.
Well, you had asked earlier, Bill, at the beginning, with some of the differences.
Right.
What I see is this. Now, I haven't seen the factions in the Democratic Party, other than I would consider myself to be more moderate in a lot of instances than certainly than Terry Norelli and Marjorie Smith and some of the liberals from the Seacoast. I'm not in that bracket. And if you want a liberal Democrat, then you just don't want me. But in the Republican Party, it's been my observation that part of the problem is this, not problem, but part of what I see is they're splintered. I never saw that before when I was up there in all those years. And people are trying to suggest that I'm a bit, now you correct me, the undertone is this, I'm a better Republican, or you're not quite as good because you're not conservative enough. You're not in this group. So then I understand that there's a smaller group of Republicans up there called the Republican Alliance. I'm not familiar with it. Very nice people, no judgment there. Then there's another group of Republicans, and then there's a larger group of Republicans. So when I see that split, and I hear what I hear, as you hear things from young Democrats, I hear some from old Republicans and young Republicans. I mean, it's almost as if you're not quite, I wouldn't say they're saying you're not quite good enough, but you just don't match up to what I think a Republican should be. And groups within the group are defining themselves. Now, that's probably similar to what's going on in Congress, i.e. the Tea Party and so forth. But I see that as prevalent. I never saw that. All the Republicans walked together. And they might have fought like H behind the scenes. They might have disagreed. They didn't like someone. They didn't like Tommy Jones. But I'll tell you, when it came down to it, there was none of this laundry airing and obviousness before.
This could be new to Concord. I think we have seen it in Washington. I think we've seen it in both parties. In the Democrat Party, they had the Americans for Democratic Action, which was supposedly...
That's in Congress?
In Congress,
yeah.
Which was that was Bill Clinton's old group that, was supposed to be kind of the moderate Democrats.
Well, he was moderate
and then you had, back then. And then you had, other groups that were considered to be more aggressively progressive and so forth. And so it could be that kind of litmus test atmosphere.
Oh, yeah, that's a good word.
And division has moved its way down to the states and moved its way into New Hampshire.
I think it's it's pretty prevalent in New Hampshire, I think. I think that's, I'm not a Republican expert, nor do I follow it closely in terms of party. But when I look back at the likes of John Stabile and Betty Tamposi and Audrey Carragher and some of the state reps from here, I don't recall anybody, they might have disagreed with each other, but I don't recall anybody thinking, hey, wait a minute, You're just not quite in my crowd.
No, not to get too historical or too esoteric about it.
Oh, please, it's so exciting and so boring, probably, the
No,
audience out there.
but-
We got to get down to some meat for them.
And I think since the days of Barry Goldwater and William F. Buckley, that there's been an effort to define republicanism on a national level. There was a time when it was sort of, we're the country club guys, and, we're the business people, and, that kind of defines who we are. And there are those, such as William F. Buckley and Barry Goldwater, who said, it's really not us. We're not defined by the fact we're successful and we're just trying to keep things from changing. But indeed, we are defined by the need to have a smaller government, not because we are so opposed to largeness. It's just that larger governments tend to reduce freedom. And we therefore are concerned about government growing and taxes growing and so forth. There's, and again, I don't want to get too esoteric.
Well, we can handle it.
But as
Might be the audience.
as those principles have begun to define themselves, starting in the 50s and translated themselves into Ronald Reagan's candidacies and others, Jack Kemp and others, there has been a division within republicanism for those who would say, really I kind of like Nelson Rockefeller and I wanted always to be, these country club Republicans, and others who are saying, no, the reason I'm involved in this party is our ideas. And I think we see that having developed in New Hampshire.
I think you're correct, but I think what happened up there last term to switch it all around to bring now the majority of the Democrats is exactly what Mary said, that from here, she didn't hear her politicians, her people up there talking for her. She didn't hear any of them really talking about the city or some of the things that she truly believed in. Now, having said that, if you start looking at it, they forgot where they're from.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't care what party you're in, I don't care if it's the Tea Party, I don't care where you're from, Republican, Democrat, if you forget where you're from, the voters will do it.
For you.
They will come and change us all around.
But this is not, just with your esoteric talk here, conversation, this is not what I'm saying. I understand all the ideologies and all of the discussions and the history, but what I'm suggesting is it's on a level of man's inhumanity to man. It's the way in which we treat each other. And we are even saying to this length, wait a minute, you're not quite there because you're not. And I speak from experience because I'm not a liberal Democrat. And I can tell you, because I have not espoused some of the liberal principles up there, I have had this too. It's almost as if you're not quite a real Democrat and you're not a real Republican. And people do get offensive and they do get rude.
They do.
But again, the reason for this, and we're not disagreeing in terms of our observation, but the reason for this, I think, is because in the past, party affiliation was somewhat tribal or somewhat cultural. I look at my family, which is Massachusetts Irish Democrats.
Stop it!
And
who would have known?
Yeah.
We trained you, and look what you jumped ship.
Look what happened. And so, but see, I'm an illustration of the point because 50 years ago, I would have been my father, and my father was an Irish. He grew up in Tip O'Neill's neighborhood in Cambridge. He was oriented to the Democrat Party. At some point, though, for some of us, and I think this is what's happening as politics is perhaps maturing, we began to look at what party better fits into my goals for this country, what I think will be good for the country or the state and so forth. And so I joined the Republican Party not because it was the country club, not because it was the tribal thing to do, not because all my family members were Republican, but because that party platform and what they talked about, fiscal responsibility and liberty and the ideals were ones that really attracted me. So of course the discussion I'm going to have with constituents, with other party members, is going to be oriented around that. It's not going to be oriented around what I saw when I had a law firm located in Dorchester, in a section of Boston, which is, hey, buddy, we're all Irish, we're all Irish Americans. And,
I would like to change the subject just a little because I
Yeah,
think
good.
what we have talked about is something very interesting. Something historic happened yesterday. There was a bill that came up as HB 41,
Yeah.
and Bill Gardner, Secretary of State, says he's not sure this has ever happened. Now, this is both Republicans and Democrats. 336
Right.
people. No, actually, yes, 336 people
Right.
voted for one bill, 0 voted against it.
Yeah.
Now, if
Historic.
that's not everybody coming together, it's astounding.
And it was a little bit, was it controversial at the beginning?
It had been before us last term, and what
Yeah.
it was is a fairly major rewrite, and I don't want to steal Ken's deserved praise for this, because I know you're intimately involved in it, but it is a redrafting of the corporations law.
It's a redraft of all
New
the
Hampshire.
corporations.
A lot of work went into it,
Yeah.
and Ken, you're right in the middle of it. Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, if you go up there, there's several things you realize. It's so hard to get anything done. All right, we all know that, no matter what happens. And even if you get it through the House and you get it through the Senate, then there is the governor, and then there's the governor's council. I mean, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So for 2 years, I've worked on one thing, and it's just been 2 amendments to the corporate laws, just 2. And the last 3 meetings we had, it was so hostile that we had the business people here, you had the bankers here, and you had the lawyers, and you had myself and one other person, Munns, and you had the Secretary
Representative
of State.
Phil Munns?
Pardon me?
Representative Philip Munns?
Yes. And you had the corporate people, and you had the Secretary of State, and you cannot believe the awful arguments we had over just 2 amendments. Well, finally, it just happens that I was the only person who sponsored it, and I said, wait a minute, I need help, so that's why I brought Munns in. It was very articulate. He's one of those individuals you watch. He's a first-termer. This guy's going to go a long way. We played the good cop, bad cop. And we really wanted it. We really worked for it. We went around, I'm sure I've mentioned it to you. We've mentioned it on the air. And yesterday, 336-0 to get it done is phenomenal. So that's kind of a win. But let us because you're in this, it's interesting how my name is not here, but the numbers are here.
Sure.
But right down here, you look at, there's Bill O'Brien.
He gets great coverage. You have to admit it.
Yeah.
You go over there to Denny's restaurant, and the old newspaper, I don't know how old it is. Right in the bottom is his picture.
And it's still over there.
It's
And
I think
doesn't
it's
take much
wet.
in the way
It's wet, and
of me
it's
contributing money to
nothing
that
at
for it
all.
to
You did
happen.
nothing. It just happened.
You have, now, the interesting part of this is, and you can probably explain it. As you said earlier, I got a little confused. But they were going to put another bill on 41 that passed 336-0.
Yeah, House Bill
Right.
668.
So, and then they were going to send it to the Senate. The Senate was going to kill it.
Again.
House
Right.
Bill 668 is in the Senate. They anticipated, your party leadership, legislative leadership anticipated that the Senate would kill it. It's a bill that would implement a hybrid state-federal partnership healthcare insurance exchange in New Hampshire under Obamacare.
Which we need.
Is that a
Here we go.
one of your questions that you want me to
No.
jump
All
on?
right, okay, all right, I'm sorry.
Which Ken Gidge says we need, and 49% of the people in New Hampshire say we don't need, 34% say we do, and 17% say they don't know what it is. But
We do need it.
but that being said, your leadership anticipated it would be killed, so they were looking around for a bill to put it on. And the first choice, which I understand was expressed to your caucus, because sometimes I hear
It
what
was.
goes on in the caucus, was we're going to put it on the bill that you worked on so
41.
hard.
41,
Senate
yeah.
Bill 41. And my understanding is that Senate President Bragdon went to Speaker Norelli and said, don't do it, because that's a valuable bill. It has a great deal of support. It's been the second term that's been up. We retained it last time, and we worked on it. Let's not engage in these politics with something that's so important for making New Hampshire more attractive to businesses.
Yeah, I think the governor too, though. I think part of that is Dave Kimball, if I may interrupt. Dave Campbell, who's the state representative from Nashua, was very involved in getting that removed. I don't know if you know that's part of the behind the scenes.
I've
And
heard
the
that as
governor and the governor wanted to see that bill pass clean.
Yeah.
That's your bill, House
Well,
Bill
it
41.
wasn't my bill, and by the
Well, the
way,
committee's
if
bill.
I say, if anybody out there thinks I had everything to do with it, no one ever does it by themselves.
Right, but someone
no,
has
no,
to
they
be
don't.
the
But
genesis.
in all fairness, I know you and I have talked about it a number of times, only because you know so much
You
about
pushed it.
and you really worked on it
Yeah,
hard. And
you
don't be
shepherded.
modest on this one. You spent a lot
Well,
of time.
Well, you shepherded it through, which is going to help the business community.
336 to 0
Right.
is historic.
Right.
But so they decided
you-
not to put
Yeah.
this
It was
Obamacare
the
bill.
governor who met with the Senate president.
Or was it?
Yes.
I thought it was Speaker.
No, it's the governor as
Actually,
well.
and I think in the article there it talks about.
Well, I'm giving you
but-
the
but it makes
behind.
a-
I'm giving you the behind the scenes.
Yeah, you probably know more than I do.
Well, I got news for you.
I
You
think
know,
everybody agreed is the point.
Yeah,
we
but
have-
everybody did agree. Yeah.
we have 3 minutes left.
Oh gosh, that was wonderful.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was quick. Now, how we usually do this? Would you like to talk a little to your constituency? Do you have a telephone number? Are you on Facebook?
No,
Any of
no,
that
no.
sort?
I'm not on Facebook, and if they want to rep on Facebook, then you want the other guy. I'm not on tweeting or twatting or whatever it's called. What's
All
the other
right,
one?
it's Twitter. Yeah.
Twitter. I'm not doing any of that, but I am on email up at the legislature. They can certainly reach me there. They can
ahead,
call
what is
me
it?
at home. Mary.Nelson.
Yeah,
at
just go to the general courts
General
legislative
courts.
page, look up Mary, and you can get all the contacts.
I'm pretty accessible. I'm around Nashua. Anybody wants anything, I think they know
Telephone
they
number?
can call me, 888-5384. Certainly, it's my home number, 603-888-5384. I just want to say this was a great opportunity to not be, to just talk. I guess obviously I'm doing pretty well with that. And to, again, thank my constituents and the people of Nashua for the kindnesses they've extended to me and for the privilege of serving them. And just give me a buzz. If you don't like what I do, you call me. If you like me to do something, you don't waste your time.
Well, I want to thank the people of Nashua, too, for sending such a gracious representative to the legislature this time, and I think I mentioned it, Mary, to you.
That's true. It's true, Mary. And I've gone to, and I think I've told you this, I went to Norelli, who's the Speaker of the House, and I walked right up to her, and Representative Jasper was there, and I said, you did something that is brilliant. And she went, what did I do wrong? And I said, you put Mary Nelson with the former Speaker, Bill O'Brien. What a mix. What a seatmates you guys are.
Well, the concern I had in participating in the mix is that I know there'd been a lot of demonization of me, and by
Is that rightly so, did you say?
no, it isn't, because what it did was produce a kind of a two-dimensional character, and some people couldn't get beyond that. So the concern I have is that I'd be sitting there and somebody'd be really uncomfortable next to me for a whole turn. It's just worked out great. So
Great.
I appreciate that, Mary.
Do you have a website or?
I do. So my email address is williamlobrien@gmail.com. My website, which is about to come up, I keep on saying that, but it certainly is o'brienforcongress.com. And you can reach me at 620-8710.
And you can get me, Ken Gidge, at, I have a website, which is an art website, gidgeworld.com. Also, you can get me at kgidge, that's KGIDGE, at AOL.com. I have a telephone, which is area code 603-864-9332. And I think Mary will be back.
I
No,
think
I
very
wanted
well.
to
Why
do
don't
a
you close it
shout out.
too?
Well, I just want to do a shout out to Ray Gagnon up in Claremont, to Tom Colantuno in Londonderry, and to Frank Byron in Litchfield. I just wanted to I just wanted to say hello to everybody, because if that's where we're going, I know a lot of people in Claremont and Londonderry and Litchfield, and I worked with Tom Colantuno for a long time. So
Great.
So you know, we just met each other this term, and I know all those folks, so it's a
Yeah.
small state.
Say goodbye, everybody.
bye. Thank
Goodbye,
you.
everybody.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.